We don't discuss salaries here. That's what my manager, Clara Ridge, said, voice steady. Smile polished the way someone repeats a script they've been told never to change. We were sitting in a bright conference room on the 10th floor of the old Harbor Building in downtown Baltimore, with fruit trays, pastel sticky notes, and that smell of forced enthusiasm that only HR events seem to have. I raised my hand. Why not? I asked. Isn't pay transparency part of equity? The room went silent. You could hear someone's pen drop. Clara blinked once, twice, like she couldn't believe I'd said it out loud. That's not an appropriate topic. Elara, she said, glancing at the HR rep beside her. Let's keep things positive. I smiled, small but calm. Positive would be fairness. The air changed. A few people looked down at their phones. My teammate Lewis coughed softly. The HR rep scribbled something in her notebook without looking up. I felt the meeting slide off its rails. 2 hours later, I got a message from Clara's assistant. Can you step into conference room B inside? Clara waited with that same corporate smile. Thinner this time. Elara, after today's comments, leadership feels your approach has created unnecessary tension, she said. We're restructuring the team, effective immediately. I stared at her. Steady. You're firing me for asking a question. She shook her head. It's not personal. Of course it was. I gathered my notebook, my badge, and the mug my daughter gave me 2 Christmases ago. Clara avoided my eyes as I walked out. In the elevator, I dialed a number I hadn't called in years, the compliance hotline printed in the back of the employee handbook. My voice didn't shake. I gave my name, my department, the details, the dates. When they asked for supporting evidence, I said, I'll send everything tonight. By the time the elevator doors opened to the lobby, I already knew what I had to do. I stepped into the cold Baltimore air, calm as ever. The next time Clara Ridge walked into that boardroom, 2 federal agents were waiting for her, and I hadn't even raised my voice. By the next morning, I was already a ghost. My company badge stopped working at the lobby turnstile. The security guard, Marvin, gave me a confused half-smile before pretending to check his monitor. Might be an error, he said, but his eyes said otherwise. I nodded and left. At home. I opened my laptop, more out of habit than hope. My inbox was gone. The folders I had built for 6 years' training logs, budget approvals, audit prep, each one blinked and disappeared before my eyes. Someone was deleting my access in real time. I texted Lewis from Ops. Hey, I can't reach the shared drive. Can you check no reply? 5 minutes later, I saw his status on Slack go from active to away. Then my account signed itself out. By nightfall, even the archived emails were gone. The system I helped design was erasing me, one file at a time. The next day, I ran into Clara outside the cafe across from the office. She looked startled, like I'd stepped out of a mirror she thought was broken. Elara, I thought you'd moved on already, she said. I was planning to, I replied, but I noticed my old reports are missing. Are you cleaning the project servers? She shifted her purse. IT handles that. Nothing personal. I watched her check her watch twice, like the conversation was costing her something. You've always been thorough, Clara, I said softly. Too thorough, maybe. Her jaw tightened. It's company policy. You no longer have authorization. I smiled. Funny. I remember writing that policy. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, before she turned away. Take care. Elara. That night, I logged into an old personal backup I'd made months ago before the restructuring started. A single folder appeared, Comp Ser Review Q2. Inside were spreadsheets, names, and numbers I hadn't noticed before. They hadn't just erased me. They were rewriting everything around me, and someone was making sure no trace of what I'd built or what I'd found was left behind. I created a new folder that night and named it Balance Watch. No emojis, no code words, just something simple enough to hide in plain sight. The first thing I did was reopen my old external drive. I'd kept copies of quarterly payroll snapshots. Not for spying, but because I was the one who always got blamed when reports went missing. 6 years of being the organized one had left me with habits that now felt like armor. By midnight, I was piecing together fragments of the company's pay structure, salaries, job grades, bonus ratios. I typed faster than I could think, trying to remember who had been promoted, who had quietly left. When I saw the first irregularity, I thought my eyes were tired. One entry listed a consulting fee of $18,000 to a firm called Velvet Harbor Systems. The payment code looked familiar, so I checked the vendor registry. Nothing. I searched the Maryland business filings. The address matched our own office building. Same floor, different suite number. The next file showed another payment, $21,000 to Sierra Apex Consulting. Same pattern, same address. I whispered to myself, "This isn't a mistake." The more I compared, the clearer it became. These weren't external vendors. They were shells funnels for internal bonuses disguised as contractor payouts. Every one of them aligned with review cycles that rewarded the same people, male senior analysts and project leads. I paused, listening to the hum of my old laptop fan. My stomach twisted. I wasn't angry yet, just focused. I scrolled back to the bonus logs. My own name appeared only once, next to a smaller adjustment tagged as equity balance. The others received triple, some quadruple, through these phantom vendors. The pattern was too clean, too deliberate. Someone had built this system to look invisible. I saved everything to an encrypted drive, copied it twice, and labeled it recipes. No one was going to erase this. Not again. The nights started to blend together. I worked with the blinds closed and the sound off. The glow of the monitor, the only light left in my apartment. Each file I opened bled into the next salary logs, audit exports, timestamp histories. I traced edits made just before quarterly reviews. The same two names appeared over and over: M. Colfax and R. Turner, both from HR administration. Every adjustment happened within the same 10-minute window before payroll closed. I called Lewis from a burner number one night. "Hey, it's me," I said. "Do you remember who handled comp adjustments last cycle?" He hesitated. "Elara. I can't talk about this. They're monitoring everything. I'm not asking for gossip, just facts." He sighed. "Colfax and Turner, like always. But don't dig." "Okay. They're saying you copied internal data before you left." The line went dead. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then, I reopened the vendor registry and cross-checked the addresses from my Balance Watch folder. Velvet Harbor Systems Suite number 403. Sierra Apex Consulting 405. My old office had been 401. I pressed my palms against the desk, steadying my breath. The next step was the metadata log. Every file left a fingerprint user ID, modification time, workstation number. The same admin credentials popped up in different cities within minutes of each other, something only possible if the accounts were being shared. Around 3 in the morning, I caught a final pattern. The last edit before each vendor payout came from a machine tagged as HQ FinCore, the finance director's personal terminal. The emails attached to those entries had been scrubbed, but the timestamps remained. This wasn't a clerical error. It was a system built to hide theft in plain sight. I exported the logs, encrypted them, and backed them up under a new name, Old Recipes V2. Somewhere between exhaustion and clarity, I realized I wasn't uncovering an accident. I was mapping a design. The email arrived on a Thursday morning. Subject line: wellness and support check-in. Polite, neutral, the kind of wording that pretends to care. When I walked into the conference room, the first thing I noticed wasn't the people, it was the scent. Lavender diffusers hummed softly on the sideboard. Someone thought fragrance could hide what they were about to do. Clara sat at the head of the table, perfectly composed. Next to her was a man I didn't recognize. Dark suit, legal pad already open. "Elara," Clara said, smiling too wide. "Thank you for coming in. We just wanted to see how you've been feeling lately." I stayed standing. "You already know the answer to that." The man cleared his throat. Ms. Mendez, we've reviewed recent events, and after consulting with leadership, we've decided to finalize your separation from the company effective immediately. He slid an envelope across the table. It made a soft, dry sound against the polished wood. No severance, I asked. Not in this case, he replied. This is not disciplinary, it's a matter of team alignment, Clara added quickly. We truly wish you the best. I looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. You're sure this is how you want to handle it? Her smile faltered. This is the decision that's been made. I nodded once. Noted. That single word hung in the air longer than any argument could. Clara's hand twitched toward her water bottle. The lawyer shifted in his chair, as if expecting me to cry or plead or shout. I did none of that. Instead, I gathered my pen from the table, the one they'd provided for my signature, and slipped it into my bag. I'll keep this, I said quietly. Neither of them spoke. When I stepped into the hallway, the air felt different, lighter somehow. I walked past reception without looking back. Outside, the lavender scent still clung to my jacket. It would fade by nightfall. But what they had started in that room had just made something inside me permanent. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the one with a scratch down the middle from when my daughter tried to carve her initials into it years ago. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. My laptop glowed like a confession booth. I opened the browser and searched for the federal whistleblower hotline. The number blinked back at me. My fingers hovered for a second. Then I dialed. A calm voice answered. Department of Labor, Compliance Division. How may I assist you? This is Elara Mendez. I said, I want to report systematic wage discrimination and falsified financial documentation. There was a pause, the kind that feels like a test. Do you have supporting materials, Ms. Mendez? Yes. Payroll logs, metadata, vendor records, and internal communications. Understood. You'll receive an encrypted link. Please upload all evidence. You may remain anonymous if you wish. I won't. I said, use my name. When I hung up, I opened the upload portal. My hand didn't shake. I selected the folders Balance Watch, Old Recipes V2, and the cross-checked vendor sheets. Each file slid into the system with a quiet progress bar that felt heavier than any sound. Then I opened another tab and submitted the same report to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Different form, same crimes, false vendor payments, payroll misrepresentation, and internal data tampering. I attached every log, every timestamp, every anomaly. When both confirmations appeared, one from each agency, I printed them and laid them side by side. 2 dates, 2 case numbers, my name written clearly beneath them. I sat back and closed my eyes. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was full measured, waiting. All those years of keeping order, of building systems that worked. And now the system itself was turning against the people who abused it. I folded the printouts, placed them in a plain envelope, and slid it under the drawer where I kept my daughter's old report cards. The reports were sent, the evidence sealed, and somewhere in the dark, the ground beneath them had already started to move. Days passed without a word. Then, on a Monday morning, my phone buzzed with a notification the company had posted on LinkedIn. A banner in bold letters read, "Proud to announce our pay transparency milestone." Clara Ridge's name was in the caption, smiling beside the CEO. I stared at the photo until it blurred. They were celebrating the very lie I had exposed. That afternoon, Lewis called from an unknown number. His voice was low. "You didn't hear this from me," he said, but an auditor from the IPO team asked for the original contractor payout logs. I leaned back in my chair. The originals. Yeah, the ones from 4 years ago. Nobody knows why. Finance looked spooked. Who's the auditor? Someone from a third-party firm name sounded federal. That's all I know. Be careful. Elara. Before I could answer, the line clicked dead. By Wednesday, the whispers had started. A former teammate sent a short text. Something's off. Legal's in the office every day now. Another message followed from a junior analyst, Mateo, the same one who once apologized for the Slack thing. He wrote, "I'm done. I quit midday. They're asking questions about vendor codes. Someone's scared." I typed back only one word. Good. Then I powered off my phone. At night, I checked the federal case portals. Both submissions still read active review. No new updates, no messages, but the silence didn't feel like neglect. It felt like pressure building under glass. The next morning, my neighbor knocked on the door. "You're working from home a lot lately," she said kindly. "Everything all right?" I smiled faintly. "Everything's in motion." When she left, I turned on my laptop. A new email had arrived from an unfamiliar sender, Secure Mail Adal. Gov, with one short line inside, acknowledged. "Please retain all physical copies until contacted by investigator." I exhaled slowly. The quiet wasn't quiet anymore. It was the sound of something deep beginning to tremble. They were celebrating again. I watched it unfold through a live feed someone leaked to the staff group chat, an internal broadcast of the pre-IPO meeting. Douglas Kern, the CEO, stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The image of confidence. Clara Ridge sat to his left, the lavender diffuser from her office now perched beside the champagne buckets. Douglas raised a glass. "To transparency, to growth, and to every member of this team who made it possible." The room applauded. Investors' faces flickered across the screen, all smiles and polished teeth. The feed stuttered, then returned. The door at the far end of the boardroom opened. 2 men stepped inside. Dark suits, badges raised. The room went still. "Mr. Kern," one of them said, voice calm, practiced. "Agents Ramirez and Lowell, Department of Labor, Enforcement Division, effective immediately. Corporate and subsidiary accounts are frozen pending review of whistleblower report 48-21C. Douglas blinked. I'm sorry. What Agent Ramirez placed a folder on the table. "All financial systems will be secured by federal order. No outgoing transactions, no access changes, no communication with the subject of the report." The live feed crackled as Clara's hand went to her mouth. Douglas turned slowly toward her. "What the hell did you just do?" Her voice trembled. "Doug, I have no idea," the second agent interrupted. "We'll need everyone's devices collected. Cooperation will make this easier." Behind Douglas, the big digital dashboard on the wall flickered. Red text flashed. "Access denied. Accounts locked." The champagne sat untouched. Someone in the back stood, then sat again, too quickly. Ramirez spoke once more, almost gently. "We'll escort you downstairs. Mr. Kern, there are additional warrants for record seizure. Legal counsel will be briefed." The feed cut abruptly. I sat back in my chair, the hum of my laptop loud in the quiet apartment. On my screen, a new message appeared from a secure sender. "Subject enforcement initiated. Body. We have begun. Thank you for your cooperation." I didn't move. Somewhere downtown, their empire was cracking from the inside out. 2 blocks away, the city went on like nothing had happened. Delivery trucks rumbled past. A child laughed somewhere near the fountain, and I sat in the corner of a small cafe stirring sugar into my coffee. The cup clinked softly, steady and slow. My laptop was open, muted. On the newsfeed, the company's stock ticker had stopped updating, just a blank gray bar where numbers used to move. My phone buzzed once. From Secure Mail Adal, Gov, subject enforcement initiated. Thank you for your cooperation. I read it twice, then set the phone face down. No smile came. There was nothing to celebrate. At another table, 2 men in suits whispered over their phones. I caught a single phrase, "Federal freeze order," before their voices faded. Inside my head, I could still picture it, the red text flashing "access denied" across every boardroom screen. The same message I had seen 100 times while testing the security firewall years ago. Now, it wasn't a glitch. It was a verdict. My old badge sat in my pocket. I turned it over once, tracing the edge of my photo with my thumb. That face looked so sure back then, someone who believed following the rules was enough to stay safe. The barista passed by and paused. "You all right, ma'am?" "I'm fine," I said. "Just watching the world correct itself." She smiled awkwardly and moved on. The coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. It tasted bitter, grounding. A message popped up from Lewis. "They took everyone's laptops. Clara's crying. They're saying you triggered it," I typed back. "Stay quiet. It's bigger than us now." Then I deleted the thread. Outside the cafe window, the glass towers of downtown Baltimore caught the afternoon light, sharp and cold. Somewhere in those mirrored floors, every locked door was holding its breath, and for the first time in months, I didn't have to hold mine. 3 weeks later, I started over. The new office was smaller, tucked above a bookstore near the harbor. No glass walls, no slogans about wellness or synergy, just real people who said good morning and meant it. My new title was Operations Analyst, Level 4, $96,000 base with a fixed review schedule. The numbers were written clearly in the offer letter, and no one flinched when I asked about them. On my first day, my manager, a quiet man named Julian, said, "We post our pay bands on the wall. Transparency saves everyone time." I looked at the chart, every position, every range, printed in black and white. "You're not worried it'll cause conflict?" I asked. He smiled. "Honesty rarely does. Secrets do." The work was steady. My desk faced a window where seagulls perched on the fire escape. Most days, I lost myself in process audits and clean data streams, no missing logs, no ghost vendors. It felt like breathing again. Sometimes, messages still found me. One from Lewis. "They're saying the audit expanded to subsidiaries. Doug hasn't been seen in weeks." Another from Mateo. "You were right. We just didn't see it then." I never replied. There was nothing left to say. After work, I'd walk home past the same cafe where it all began. The barista would nod, remembering my order: black coffee, 2 sugars. The city sounded different now, calmer, balanced, like a system repaired. One night, a soft envelope waited in my mailbox. Inside was a short letter stamped Department of Labor Ongoing Investigation. At the bottom, one line stood out: Case 4821C remains active. I folded the letter and placed it inside a drawer with my old ID badge. Then I turned off the light. Justice, I realized, didn't always arrive with noise or headlines. Sometimes it lived quietly in the margins, steady and patient, holding its own kind of power. I poured a cup of coffee, opened my laptop, and began my first audit report for the new firm. Some rebuilds don't start with applause. They start with proof.